Sorry. No, I'm not nearly as cool as a Peaky Blinder person, by the way. Also, another fun fact about Peaky Blinders. It's not actually filmed in Birmingham. It's filmed in technically my hometown of Stockport, which is even more of a crap hole than Birmingham. So, which really, if you're really covering for like 1800s Birmingham, it's not good in 2023. But anywho, so hello, I am Daniel. I have actually lived in Austin now for 5 years. I have a weird accent, not Australian, not South African. I swear a lot, so apologies, but I don't really fucking care. So, and the one thing I will say is before I start, I really need to say thank you to Ruth because I have changed this 1,000 times, and my fiance basically pummeled me into submission about doing this presentation. The other presentation I was going to do was "You're shit and you know you are," but that apparently wasn't uplifting or motivational enough. So, and I know a random white guy, middle-aged, balding, 33, with a weird accent, telling people how to be better is just like absolute fucking peak, isn't it? So, I apologize for that, but this is really where we are today. So, the only thing I can say, though, is hopefully you will walk out of this with actually something tangible rather than like, what the fuck did this guy say? Like, I honestly would have preferred to be playing Neopets.com, if that is still a thing. But as I ramble on, I will get into this. So, how to be a better product manager. You can, I can go into my experience. I've started 2 companies, one successfully, one less successfully. I've worked in large enterprises, mid-markets, I've scaled teams, I've hired teams, and I have fucked up a huge fucking amount. Like, it is astronomical. But the one thing I have always done, which is figured out, like, how to have the most impact, if I'm honest, on probably doing as little as you possibly can to get away with. Now, for anyone who's hiring, you're thinking, why is this guy talking to me about this? But I want to actually go into detail around about how being a better product manager is actually going to make your life easier, but not just that, it's actually going to make the business's life easier as well. So, yes, it works. So what's the agenda today? Well, basically it's going to split into 3 sections. Perception versus reality, what an actual ideal PM is, which, let's be honest, we're never going to get to, but we can strive to, and then why should you actually care? It's going to break down into those 3 sections. I know it's, 9:16 in the morning. Everyone is probably still waking up. If you're not, you're probably on your 15th cup of coffee. So I'm going to keep this short and sweet. And the one thing I will say is, please challenge me on this. If you think I'm full of shit, call me out. Put your hand up and be like, yo, bro, what the hell? Call me out. I'm here to have this conversation. And hopefully, as well, we can get away, we can actually all walk away with something that we can take back and enact. So, what do companies then actually think product management is? I don't know if anyone has recently looked at a job description or interviewed or done anything, but today's product management is what can only be described as an octopus of chaos. It's one of those where you're expected to be able to solve any problem. You'll be able to get product market fit within one go. You can multitask like an octopus, and that you have 100% track record. You're never going to get anything wrong. They tell you to solve something, you do it, you increase revenue by 100%, and God even comes down and shakes your hand himself. It's absolutely stupid. It's absolutely stupid. And the reason you need to be aware of this is because these are kind of the boundaries that you're operating in. People will often hire you under this or want to hire you under this, and then that's what they expect. Or if it's not what they expect, they're just going to think that you can solve and do anything that they want, and off you go. So many people are like, hey, I was hired as a product manager, but I'm a program manager, I'm a project manager. I'm weirdly in sales or CS. People just don't understand. So what is the reality of being a product manager? Now, again, my lovely fiance, she made me cut my 5 slides I had on this and brought it down to 3 bullet points. And the reality is basically having a cat is like. I don't know if any of you do, when you have a laser, it is like a very torturous game. They love it, they're constantly catching it, and they never, ever get it. It's not like sales. If I'm in sales, I know every quarter I have a quota, and if I hit it, I'm great. Next quarter, I have the same quota, I hit it, I'm great. CS, I have retention, I have NPS scores. Engineering, I've got to release certain amounts of stuff. In product, that goal is ever changing and ever evolving, because if it's not, you're shit at your job. If you go, wow, I completed this is amazing, I've never come across a product manager who goes, well, job done. It's insane, you're not going to do it. And on one hand, it's fantastic, but on the other hand, you're never going to, it's very easy, I should say, it's very easy to get into the habit of like, what have I actually achieved? And because of that, it's then hard to actually measure your ability for an impact, but it's incredibly fun and challenging. Like, none of you would be here if it wasn't. Everyone would have gone to probably the cocaine-filled sales room next door and had a much better time. So like, here we are. And that's because we absolutely love it. We love the ever-evolving challenge. We love the ever kind of just changing atmosphere of product. What product was 5 years ago is what's not it's not what it is today, and what it's going to be in 5 years is not what it is today. It's ever evolving and ever changing, and there's very few industries like that. So, the different types of product management, there are thousands, but there's generally two, the corporate and the startup. Now, I do want to say neither of these are right and neither of these are wrong, because they're both operating within the bounds that they are basically constrained to operate in. And because of that, it's like the product manager you have to be able to get stuff done. The corporate, you don't really talk to customers, and if you do, it's only to validate a problem which your exec team has already told you to go and validate. You know, it's one of those where you're like, okay, I've got to like figure out how to release this product and why, what pain points do I need to solve, but you're already being told to solve this problem and this product. It takes 6 months to release. You know, you only do 100% on the release schedule. You know, iterate. You probably release that product, and then 9 months later, you've actually forgotten it's ever existed, and you might even be sunsetting it. You're always busy, and it's really tough to maneuver and to kind of understand the impact you're having, and everything you do is incredibly safe. Now, again, I'm not shitting on corporate. I'm really not. I used to work in corporate. It is literally the operator's Monday that you are in. It's a different kind of product management. On the flip side, you have the startup kind of product management, which is probably next to the cocaine sales field people, in the sense of you are constantly talking to everyone. You are bouncing from customer to customer. You'll talk to your aunties, brothers, sisters, dog's girlfriend. Like, it doesn't matter. You have a problem. You want to talk to someone. You are going to go and talk to them. You are constantly changing direction because you have no direction yourself. So again, you are bouncing all over the place. And not just that, the changes are going to be instant. And there's one thing that it's going to be is you are going to change the trajectory of the business. It's 50-50 though on whether it's actually going to make the business or potentially ruin and break that business. Who really knows? But we'll find out. And because of that, you kind of get these weird ideas of product management where corporate wants the startup kind of product management and the startup wants a little more of the corporate product management. But neither of them are, I would argue, what product managers should be. And it's how do you operate within that, but still be able to be a product manager selfishly to develop yourself. So what is that ideal product manager? Well, there's a ton of it. And again, I had to cut a lot of this because, let's be honest, no one wants to listen to me ramble for more than about 15 minutes. So there's about 5 points. You want to be talking to customers about 70% of the time. You want to be making sure that you're talking to enough customers that you have enough of an idea, but you're also talking to internal stakeholders, your engineering team, design team, CS, sales, and you're bringing everything together. You're not just talking internally and you're not just talking externally, but you are constantly getting a feedback loop of what needs to be solved and why. But not only that, you actually have that business alignment with enough leeway to be able to move. So rather than being the startup where you're just like bouncing absolutely everywhere because no one knows what's upside down or what's up and what's down, and the corporate where you're only going to do what you're told to do, you actually have enough leeway to be able to operate and understand. But the biggest one, and if there's one thing to take away from here, it's the 0 to 1. That you understand that you can talk to customers, you can understand how to get that business alignment, and then you understand how to actually take something that will change the trajectory of the business. Not in the startup way where it's 50-50 on whether or not they're going to go bankrupt, not in the corporate way where it is so safe like my grandma could iterate quicker, in the sense that it is generally like this was not known as a problem, and now we have understood that it is, and we are now a market leader because we have addressed this, and that is because you were doing your job of talking to customers, figuring it out, getting the alignment, and then releasing something. And that, of course, then means that you have to be able to get that exec buy-in, and that you have to be able to iterate. If you can hit those 5 points, you are probably the best product manager I have ever known. No one can do that I'll rephrase, apart from me, obviously, no. Very few product managers can do that at any one time because it is almost impossible. You have to do certain ones at certain times to be able to have the impact and to be able to move. So to be able to be aware of what you need to do, that's also a huge skill. So why should I give a flying French Connection UK? Great British clothing brand, by the way. Obviously, I would never swear in this. So why should you care? Well, being adaptable. As I mentioned before, being a product manager is an ever-changing industry. It is not the same, and it is not going to be the same because product is not the same. And that's one of the reasons I would argue this is because product-led growth now is having a huge kind of impact. If you go back 5 years ago, product-led growth was a buzzword that absolutely nobody cared for. Maybe the odd tech company said that they were, but realistically, no one actually understood what true product-led growth is. Now you have anyone and everyone on the product-led growth train. Doesn't mean that they are product-led growth, but people actually understand and are getting bought in. And that train is only going in one direction. Even during this, recession, people are still hiring product. People are still hiring engineering. People are still hiring design. People are still hiring in order to be able to have an impact on their business. And not just that, it's for your own professional growth. If you can honestly say to people, I've taken this from 0 to 1 and I've iterated on it and I have tracked these metrics and I've spoken to these customers, you don't just stand out in the application process. You are basically going to walk into a job. You are the ideal candidate. You are the people that everyone wants. And by having that attitude, you actually also help the business, which gives you a much better way of retention, getting bonuses, getting pay increases, getting more responsibility, and professionally developing yourself in the direction that you want to go. So what skills do you need? Well, there's a lot. There's a lot. You've got the standard ones, the identifying your strengths, you've got to kind of, understand where you are, being able to get feedback, cross-team functionality and all of that stuff. And that stuff you should already have as a product manager. But these 4 ones are more kind of soft skills, which I'm assuming every single person in this room has. But it's how you put them to use. It's how you put them to use to work for you that is really going to be the differentiator. Communication. If you can communicate out what you are doing and why, that stands you above so many people. Now, as a product manager, part of your job is to communicate out what you're doing and why, but often it's just a presentation, hosting 14,000 meetings, and after the 7th time of doing it, hoping that people eventually listen to you. What I mean by communication is being purposeful in what you are doing, bringing that kind of oomph behind you, being like, we are doing this because of X, Y, and Z. We are not doing this because of A, B, and C. And then that goes in with managing conflict. It's so much easier when you have an exec team saying you have to do this, and especially now, and again, this economy where you're like, I just want to keep my head down, it's so much easier just to be like, sure, not an issue, we'll get it done, I don't care, I get a paycheck, you're happy with me, I'm happy with you, life's easy, cool. But actually to be able to manage that conflict accordingly and appropriately is a real skill. Being like, hey, I would happily do this, but you now have to tell me what I have to get rid of on my roadmap. I'm changing these 3 metrics. I'm increasing revenue with this, I'm increasing retention with this, and I'm improving internal efficiency with this. You tell me which one I get rid of. And if you're happy to get rid of that at your expense, absolutely fine. You own it, not my issue. If you suddenly put the onus back onto them, whilst I would argue that is managing conflict, a lot of people won't perceive it to be. They'll just perceive it that you're bringing your strong data, your strong understanding, and your strong communication skills to them, and that they'll either not back down, but you'll have a conversation, and that they'll actually be more thoughtful in what they bring you in the future. Tenacity. Every single product manager should have this. You have to be able to figure shit out. If you can't figure shit out, you need to probably start somewhere else and not listen to this talk. Tenacity is your biggest skill, figuring out where to go and why and how. If you don't have that ability then figure out how do you get it. Who does it really well? Who is the one in your organization who figures out what to do and why? Why are they always on top? Why are they always the one that people go to? Figure out what skills they have. Now, unfortunately, there is some ass kissing. There is some just unfortunately having to take stuff off when you don't want to. But as long as you have it to a means to an end, you know the direction you're going, and you know that the benefit it's going to have on you, then figure out and take that path. And then lastly, passion for feedback. I'm assuming here everyone does at least one 360 a year. You know, you sit down with your manager, you sit down with, if you've got, a team with your team, you give them the feedback. Usually in January, maybe December, everyone remembers it for about a month, and then you forget it and rinse and repeat and go again same time next year. A passion for feedback is actually taking the onus. It's having that feedback loop constantly. After a meeting, going to the people in the meeting, being like, did you understand that meeting? Was it useful? Did it further the conversation along? But not just that. Not just staying within product, get the fuck out of product, yeah? Product is such an insular organization. We're so focused on being gatekeeping because we have so many requests. Doesn't matter. Go to sales and be like, hey, how can I help you sell more? Go to CS, hey, how can I help you retain more? What can I do better to actually communicate this out more? I can't do everything you want me to do, but I can at least give you an understanding and an insight into what we're doing and why. How can I basically get you to accelerate your job? If you get that feedback from them, combine that with the feedback on how to be a better product manager, you are going to stand out above absolutely every single person in the room. So, what is the end game? Efficiency. And I mentioned it before, being able to work far smarter rather than harder and longer, especially with the work-life balance. If you can focus on a few things that generally change the trajectory of the business, one, it means that you have to context switch a lot less. But two, it means that you can actually do less work by having a much bigger and better impact. Rather than constantly doing tiny little feature releases, and whatnot, and just ticking everything over, you can actually have a huge impact on the business whilst actually doing less work, making your life a ton easier. You get that work-life balance. You make sure that you can actually enjoy that remote work culture, or if it's hybrid, or if it's in office, you can at least make sure that you can leave on time. You can get to where you want to get to. You're increasing your productivity, but you're also increasing your business's productivity. They're generally going to have absolutely no issue with you if you've generated, 20x revenue, what they were expecting, but you're doing less work. Generally, they're not going to know, nor are they going to care, because at the end of the day, their revenue is better, your productivity is better, everyone is happy. And then the last one as well, is continuously innovating. If you can get into that where you're focusing on one or two things, you can constantly innovate. You can constantly be talking to customers, figuring out what those problems are, and you can be constantly bringing it back. And it becomes a fantastic self-fulfilling prophecy. You're doing less work, you're doing more of a product manager role, you're making your life easier, your business is doing better, and you're at the top of the pile for bonuses, for promotions, and absolutely everything. So that is why I think people should aim to be getting towards that better product manager role. So, any questions or strongly worded rebuttals?
What I was kind of thinking I would see as part of this is guidance on quantifying your success.
Sure. So quantifying success, I'm a big data guy. I like to quantify pretty much anything and everything. There's a real misconception around about having data. You need to be able to quantify your success. I can't tell you what that success is, but you need to figure out what are going to be the metrics that are going to be, one, helpful to you, but two, basically show you off. That doesn't mean that they're always helpful to the business or always aligned with the business, and that doesn't mean that that's always going to be useful for you. But if it's something that people can understand and see, that's great. So to give you an example, when I was at a large enterprise, I was working on a data platform on cybersecurity. And one of the big things was, basically, how do I quantify this data platform success? I can look at a ton of metrics, data going out to customers, data coming in from our own internal tools, all of that stuff. And the one I actually focused on was our CS metric, outreach. Because suddenly with the data platform, outreach to our CS team plummeted off an absolute cliff. And that got the exec teams to notice, that got CS noticed, that got sales even noticing. Was that metric hugely useful to me in the data platform? No. Did it get me the visibility? Did it get me kind of like on people's radar and like on people's good side? 100% yes. So to be able to quantify, look at what's useful for you, but also look what's going to broadcast essentially your skills and what you're working on, the impact that you're having to the wider org, rather than just like those directly attributable insights of like the data platform, so to speak. Does that help?
Oh, it helps. I agree. In fact, if the higher, the broader you want, in my opinion, I'm going to offer you not a rebuttal, but kind of like a agreement, is the higher up you want your impact to be recognized, and the more broadly you want your impact to be recognized, you've got to identify metrics that align with the strategic priorities. Because no one else is going to want to hear, or not that many people are going to want to hear the fuzzies.
100%.
What you did, they're going to want to hear our numbers, which is the advantage that like sales. The co-count salespeople, they got a number on their head.
Yep.
And that clarifies everything. Right? That's the advantage of that.
No, 100%. Like, going back to that point, you know, if you don't have a number or if you don't have a metric, it's really hard. So figure out exactly what my, you know, good gentleman said here, which is what data can you provide that or find that aligns to the company's strategic objectives, or something that you know an exec cares about. It's a selfish game, and it really is. But at the end of the day, if you don't, it becomes harder to progress. It becomes harder to get that work-life balance. It becomes a lot easier to just kind of get dragged down into just being a feature factory person. And as soon as you can figure that out, it's not easy. It's not going to happen tomorrow. It's not going to happen today. Maybe you'll have an epiphany on the toilet. I have no idea, but it's doubtful. But figure out what's going to get you to be noticed, or what's going to progress your career. Any other questions or strongly, no more strongly worded rebuttals, but any more questions? Sweet. Oh, I have one on here. Apologies. How do you develop tenacity as a skill? Become British and just tell people to fuck off. It's a lot easier. No, developing tenacity as a skill. It's something that is generally hard, and it's something that I would argue is probably one of the few skills that actually comes slowly over time. One of the biggest tenacities, or like one of the ways I developed my tenacity, is actually I started a company and we pitched for investment for loads. And I think the first 20 investors we pitched at, only 3 of them made me cry. Like, it was absolutely brutal. But what it showed me was like how to really hone in on what actually matters, how to actually hone in on what is going to move something forward. 90% of the work you do, if you didn't do it, or if you got hit by a bus, nobody's even going to notice it wasn't done. Get rid of that work, tick it over, leave it to the absolute last freaking minute until you have someone literally like knocking down your door with a baseball bat. You might want to question your boss if they do that, but that's a different question. Once you figure out what actually is the impact, that 10%, figure out how do you get that done at all costs. What is going to drive that? What is actually driving this motivation? Is it sales? Is it CS? Go and work with them. Go and suck up to them. Go and talk to the VP of sales. Go and talk to the VP of engineering. Go and talk to someone who knows how to be political. Go and talk to the person who you think is the worst person in the business, but has been there for 15 years, because there is a reason that they have been there for 15 years, and figure out why. And I'm not saying that you have to be that person. Absolutely not. But what I'm saying is figure out what skills that you want to take away from that person and that you can utilize for yourself. Any favorite, I can actually see down here. Any favorite tools or frameworks for synthesizing and prioritizing feedback? Oh God, I got into trouble recently on this one. I will give my diplomatic answer. Work cross-functionally and understand the wider problems. No. Actual feedback, I'm sorry, but like actual feedback, like the frameworks to prioritize kind of that feedback. ICE, and I think there's a few other ones like that. They're fantastic for prioritizing, I would argue, like bug fixes and small features. They're absolutely great. They give structure, everyone understands, etc. Anything larger than, I would argue, like half a sprint's worth of work or like a week's worth of work it actually becomes not that good because so much goes into prioritization. So for me, for prioritizing, I don't really care what you prioritize on within reason. What I understand though is that like everyone understands how I prioritize and why. So I talk to CS, I talk to sales, and I'm like, look, this is our company OKRs of like, I don't know, increasing enterprise revenue by 10%. As such, we're focusing on that this quarter. This one that you've done, this tiny bug fix that, you know, realistically doesn't mean shit, we're not prioritizing. I know you've got one of our largest customers shouting at us, but we're not prioritizing it because it doesn't really have an impact on the business. I use the company's vision, I use the product vision as a shield to basically get rid of all of that. And your product and company vision is ever changing. Now, again, I'm talking in theoreticals here. I know when you have an angry exec shouting at you or someone from sales who's been up for 15 hours straight shouting at you, it's a lot harder to say no. But the framework I would honestly advocate to employ is being open and honest in your framework. People don't really care. Get a page, talk to sales and CS and be like, this is how I prioritize. This is what I'm focusing on. If you don't like it, have a conversation with me. This is now, you know how to position things. It puts the onus on them if they want it prioritized to be able to get it done right. And if it is really an emergency, you can obviously take it in as and when and, you know, act accordingly. Hopefully that's given you some insight. Any tips and frameworks for getting exec buy-in? The biggest one, honestly, is putting the onus on them. Execs, I found, generally like to operate in a bit of a binary world because their world is kind of binary. They either sink or they swim. There is no in between. No company, no exec goes, I just want the company to stay at, 10 million ARR a year. No exec's going to say that. They want to increase it, and if they don't increase it, that's them sinking. So put the onus on them. Be like, hey, I found this problem with from talking to customers. I've quantified it. I've validated this, and we can't afford not to do this because, if we don't, we're potentially losing out on whatever. If you're happy on losing out on that based on these things, absolutely fine, but that's your onus. It's not my business, not my problem. You pay my paycheck. And I probably won't be quite as blunt as I am, but put the onus on them. Make sure that they understand that, if they don't buy into this, if they don't understand the importance of this, that's fine. It's no skin off your back. You're still going to get paid. The skin is the fact that, they now might lose customers. They might lose it to competitors. They're going to lose market share. They might lose revenue, retention, or because they didn't want to make this decision, or they're taking too long on this decision. It's not your problem. It's actually their problem. And I think that's a big thing in product management. A lot of people, because a lot of product managers, or most product managers, or pretty much every product manager actually cares. You don't become a product manager unless you actually do care. You take that work on yourself. You take that onus. You take that pain on yourself of I have to solve everything, when actually it's not always you. Sometimes it has to be the exec team, and it's flipping that mentality. What does 0 to 1 look like in reality? Oh God, absolute freaking chaos. It is not enjoyable, but it is probably the best experience for being a product manager. I'm not advocating everyone should go and start a startup now and quit their jobs or get a side hustle. But one of the biggest things to do is hiring founders, or at least talking to them. You understand that they generally go and talk to customers and then they release it. So how do you get that into an exec team, or not an exec team, but into your business? Treat it almost like you're being entrepreneurial, in the sense of go and talk to customers, just figure it out. And once you do that, what is the absolute bare minimum? One of my very good friends, he released his business, which is now multi-millions in ARR. He released it on $250 based on contractors from Upwork. Now, I'm not advocating, by the way, for your business, go and spend $250 on Upwork for a developer. Absolutely not, before anyone shouts at me. But he focused on the absolute core minimum thing, which was how do I validate this? How do I actually take this on the bare thing? How does that translate to the corporate world or the actual reality world? How can I release this with one engineer rather than a team of engineers? Can I even release it with one engineer who's only working on it 1 day a week? What would be the simplest, purest form to be able to actually get feedback on this. Rather than like trying to talk to your engineering manager or whoever, being like, I need a whole team to work on this for, 2 sprints, be like, I just need an engineer for 2 days a week, for half a day, to be able to just do this, this, and this. And I know it's going to take a while, and I know it is. Because generally when you're doing 0 to 1, no one gives a shit. No one cares. No one is actually like expecting anything of you. So it's on you to be able to prove it out. So don't run at 1,000,000 miles an hour. Go at the pace that your organization is going to allow you. So if that's getting 1 engineer for 1 day a week, work on that pace. It's going to force you to think a lot cleaner. It's going to force you to kind of interact in a sense of more urgency and to kind of focus on what's actually going to drive it forward, rather than being like, I have a whole engineering team, and if I don't have it, I can't do it. Try and get rid of that mentality in that regard. And sorry, go on. One last question.
Yeah, sure. Appreciate the talk. And one of the things I appreciated specifically was kind of the acknowledgement that there's always this gap between the reality versus like the ideal in a process, and that just because there is a gap, that doesn't mean necessarily that it's a failure for the PM or the overall organization. And I think one of the things that makes that challenging to navigate is sometimes organizations become enamored with frameworks or processes beyond their usefulness in a way.
Yep.
Like people, sometimes there's an obsession with like certain ceremonies or certain buzzwords or like OKR and agile, and right. It's like your comment about it in response to the question about metrics, I thought was interesting, and it made me think, if you're dealing with that kind of context, to what extent can you sort of transcend that or break the spell with really compelling metric stories that can sort of make people look past those things and be like, you know what, like I was really obsessed with this shiny object framework, but you're telling this awesome data story, so I'm just going to stop giving a shit about the shiny object and I'm going to go straight to that. Like, how much can that transcend that sort of barrier, if that makes sense?
100%. And my biggest advice, honestly, and like, I'll probably get into trouble for this, but oh well, ignore. Like, what I mean by that is like, execs are like, here's a new framework, here's a new metric, blah, blah, blah. Ignore to the degree you can. Operate as a product manager that you can. Like, that's the beauty of product management. There is no perfect way. Like, I know I just spoke about the ideal way, but like how you get there and how you do it is completely down to you. I'm going to be a very different product manager to you. You're going to be a very different product manager to them. Everyone here is going to be a different kind of product manager, and that is the beauty of it. The only thing that process should do is enable that velocity. It should not hinder you. If there's anything that is hindering you, within reason, generally ignore it or put it down to minimal. One of the things I found is that most people just want to tick a box. They don't actually care. And if you accidentally don't do it, and if you accidentally just forget about it, it has such a negligible impact on the business. It's generally never brought up, but it actually frees you up to be able to go and do what you need to be doing. It actually frees you up to be able to focus on being the product manager that you can be and that you want to be, rather than like, oh, I'm just a process monkey who's just ticking a box. So my advice would be like, use the data, use that story, but also don't be afraid to ignore it or to downplay those frameworks. And again, this is probably not the best talk to give, but like, at the end of the day, that's being a product manager, is to understanding the problem you're solving. And if something is getting in your way, if something is a blocker, figure out how to get around it. So I think that is all my time, but thank you very much. If you have any more questions, just let me know.